In this video, I'm discussing how codependent sincerity hurts you. Let's dive in. Hi friends, welcome to my channel. If it's your first time here, my name is Tamie M. Joyce. I'm the founder of Tamie M Coaching, and I run a powerful 8-week transformational coaching program called the Freedom Class, specific to healing and recovery from codependency and narcissistic abuse. If you'd like to learn more about the possibility of becoming a coaching client, there's a link in the description below where you can apply to see if you qualify for a free one-on-one consultation with either myself or a member of my team. So let's talk about how you hurt yourself with your codependent sincerity. But first, let's define what it means to be codependent, shall we? The best definition I know is this. The crux of codependency involves a fundamental breakdown in the relationship with self, usually stemming from our early childhood experiences, which then extends to maladaptive ways of relating with others. In other words, becoming codependent on, and therefore enmeshed with, other people. Another way it's often described in the narcissistic abuse recovery community is self-love deficit disorder, a term originally coined by Ross Rosenberg, and one which is, of course, accurate. But let's have a closer look at how this self-love deficit disorder actually manifests in day-to-day life. To begin with, untreated codependents have no real sense of self, no real identity of their own. They go through life not knowing who they are or how they feel for that matter. The general experience can be summed up with, I don't know how I feel until I know how you feel, or I don't know who I am until you tell me who I am. And the problem with this is, of course, when an untreated codependent, we are not usually surrounded by healthy others. So the feedback we're typically on the receiving end of is rarely, if ever, accurate in terms of who we really are, the good that we actually carry, and the potential that we actually have. Instead, we're often on the receiving end of others' distorted perceptions and projections, which actually have little, if anything at all, to do with us. But not knowing who we are at our core, not being firmly grounded in a rock-solid identity and healthy sense of self, we go through life being adversely affected by all the negative opinions we're on the receiving end of. Painful stuff. Some other classic telltale traits of the untreated codependent are things like struggling with chronic self-doubt and low self-worth, being overly responsible or completely irresponsible. In other words, the perpetual adult child who is fully unwilling or unable to become a full-fledged functional adult. And when it comes to feeling overly responsible for others, this manifests as a feeling of more responsible for them than we are for ourselves. Feeling responsible for how others feel, as well as responsible for their problems. In other words, solving their problems. Again, being overly responsible for people we are not at all responsible for. In addition, not always, but often enough, codependents will also present with a tendency to be controlling, and then project their controlling attitudes and behaviors onto others. One of my longest standing friendships is with someone who fits this bill exactly. Over the years, I've actually wondered whether or not this person is on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. But what I know for sure is that they are never coming from a malevolent place. So it's clear to me that they're not a narcissist, but rather an untreated codependent with some narcissistic traits. Big difference. Meaning, this is not someone with a destructive narcissist personality pattern, just someone who has done zero work on themselves from a healing and recovery perspective, and as such, their unresolved codependency issues make it extremely difficult to enjoy and maintain a relationship with them. This person is best described as being rigid, controlling, and uber defensive, in particular with me. Unfortunately, in spite of my best efforts, it's clear that I am very triggering for this person. Tell me whether or not you can relate to this or if this resonates with you. Let me know in the comments section below. Also, if you'd like to better understand this phenomenon and how it manifests, you can watch this video here. Now, because I have done my work, I'm clear. I'm certainly not perfect, but I also know that it's not my stuff. So I just do my thing and let them do theirs. And from a place of detachment and actual self-love, I enjoy the quasi-friendship for what it is, from a distance and real low doses. It's the only way. Now, not surprisingly, this person is absolutely unable to see, own, accept, or acknowledge any of this about themselves. In fact, instead of owning their own maladaptive way of showing up in the relationship, they're hyper defensive, constantly on guard for ways they need to over-explain, defend, and justify themselves. Again, I'm clear, right? This is not my stuff. On the very rare occasions when I choose to engage with this person, I simply stay in my body, remain boundaried, and observe while they consistently and predictably project their own controlling nature onto me, and then wonder why I have a difficult time staying in the friendship, and why I choose to keep my distance and maintain low contact. Will they ever see it? Probably not. So I choose to love them from a distance, and as I said, enjoy what little connection we do have for what it is. And I keep my expectations real low in that regard. And you may be wondering, why bother? Well, because I love this person, and I know this person loves me. And because I've actually done my work and continue to do my work, they can't hurt me. Furthermore, as I said, I know they're not coming from a malevolent place. They're mostly quite sincere and simply do not know what they do not know, and for reasons that have nothing to do with me and that I may never understand, they're not ready. That's not only not my stuff, it's none of my business. Now, with all of that said, in addition to being controlling, untreated codependents have a tendency to cross boundaries. In fact, poor or completely non-existent boundaries are a big issue for people suffering with untreated codependency. One way their poor boundaries can show up is in the offering of unsolicited advice. Codependents feel compelled to jump in and fix, help, save, and rescue, which is often nothing less than meddling where they ought not be meddling, and often to their own detriment. Telling other people what they should do, how they should feel, what they should think, often from a place of feeling very self-righteous about their own opinions, often from a place of very black and white, all or nothing thinking. Meanwhile, they struggle with understanding their own feelings. Meanwhile, their own lives are completely chaotic, unsatisfying, and unmanageable. Meanwhile, they don't follow the unsolicited advice they're so quick to give others. We've got to start seeing things for what they are, friends. We have to start paying more attention to our own side of the street and the ways in which we show up with maladaptive relating styles of our own. Coming from a place of sincerity doesn't mean much when we're operating from a really unhealthy codependent perspective. All manner of damage can be done, not least of which to ourselves, under the guise of sincere intent. Now comment below and let me know whether or not you're finding value in this video. Let me know in the comments section below. Also, if you'd like to learn more about the possibility of working with me in one of my coaching programs, there's a link in the description below where you can apply to see if you qualify for a free one-on-one consultation with either myself or a member of my team. Untreated codependents also have difficulty trusting themselves and making good decisions. They often feel used and underappreciated. And in the realm of narcissistic abuse, this lack of self-trust, low self-worth, combined with their poor boundaries and feeling overly responsible for others, equates to being a fabulous target to be fully exploited by a destructive narcissist. The typical people-pleasing codependent caretaker happily volunteers to go through life sacrificing themselves for the destructive narcissist, and as a result suffers with chronic feelings of anxiety, irritation, exhaustion, frustration, and disappointment. They live with a perpetual sense of malaise and dissatisfaction with regard to themselves and just about every aspect of their lives. And harsh as this might sound, the reality is they do this to themselves. How do I know? because I did this to myself for many years, selling my soul, so to speak, in the hopes of one day getting some scrap of love, validation, acceptance, or approval from people who fully did not have it to give. And here's the thing, friends. What all of this is about at the end of the day is not only a colossal lack of self-love, but also a fundamental lack of emotional maturity. That's right. If we want things to change, we have to change. And when it comes to these issues, it is very much about growing up. We have to grow up now. No matter how convincingly an untreated codependent may present with their false persona in terms of being overly responsible and all adult-like, running around doing all the things and being all the things for all the people, bleeding themselves dry while hoping for some scrap of external validation and approval, which seldom, if ever, comes. No matter how convinced they and others are that all of this is coming from a sincere place, which in most cases it most certainly is, no matter how sincere and well-intended the codependent may be, the bottom line is this: we hurt ourselves when we stand still allowing others to hurt us. And when we finally take ownership of that fact, not them and their appalling attitudes and behaviors, that's not ours to own, but the ways in which we are complicit in our own abuse, when we take ownership of that stuff, then and only then are we able to take our power back and, as a result, make the necessary changes that lead to a much better, happier, and more peaceful life. As someone who has been a recovering codependent for a very long time, what I can tell you is this: there is another way, a far better way. But it involves committing to an ongoing healing and recovery process for ourselves. And here's what's true about that. Codependency recovery is a lifelong journey. We have to be committed to healing all of the wounding and trauma that caused our authentic self to go into hiding to begin with. We have to be willing to drop the false codependent persona that rose to the surface of our experience way back when as a means of surviving whatever shit show we found ourselves in when we were far too young to have any say in the matter. We have to be committed to going inside, figuring out who we really are, and doing the work that enables us to learn how to love, validate, and accept ourselves for ourselves, our authentic self, no matter who likes it or doesn't like it. Then we have to be willing to grow the strength and courage it takes to stand sovereign and free, come what may. In the meantime, yes, be kind, be helpful, and yes, do for others where you're able, but check your motives. Are you doing, being, and giving from a place of joy and abundance and genuine kindness, compassion, and concern? Or are you on a never-ending treadmill trying to be seen as good enough, kind enough, giving enough, because you fundamentally do not ever feel like you are ever enough? Yes, give and do and be and show up where it matters, but never to your own detriment. Never at the expense of your personal integrity, your self-respect, or your personal welfare, mental health, and overall well-being. Never. Being kind, being spiritual, being compassionate, being loving ought not include allowing ourselves to be targeted and/or exploited without consequence. And all the consequence has to be is the removal of our time, energy, attention, assistance, support, or any other form of endorsement, lest people with a destructive narcissist personality pattern mistake our kindness for weakness. Remember, you teach people how to treat you, and you are not weak. You are a warrior, and it's time now. And with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. But before I go, how can Tamie M Coaching help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell to make sure you get my new video every Friday. Number 2, watch the free web class by clicking on the link in the description below. You'll learn about my personal journey and professional experience through decades of research specific to healing and recovery from codependency and narcissistic abuse. You'll also learn about some powerful strategies that you can begin to use today. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and you'd like to be supported by a stellar community of like-minded people who are focused on solutions that actually work, you can learn more about my 8-week transformational coaching program, the Freedom Class, by going to TamieMCoaching.com and clicking on Programs and Reviews for all the details. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got some burning issue or you need something solved, you want to break free from painful relationship patterns permanently and actually make lasting progress in your healing and recovery, go to TamieMCoaching.com and click on Apply Now to learn how you can become my client.